Namo Myoho Renge Kyo, Namo Myoho Renge Kyo, Namo Myoho Renge Kyo. Hi, how are you? Good, I hope. I hope you're in good health and secure. That's saying something these days. All right, back to the MahaPariNirvana Sutra. Now, we've been talking so far in this chapter about Shakyamuni has been talking about this since day one, but it just doesn't. The mind of the people of his day, they're just so, stuck? Is that a good enough word? They're just so indoctrinated in this mystical thinking that they're not in control of their lives, that there are forces out there that are controlling their lives. And without the stern daily guidance of this man who's achieved Buddhahood in their lives, they're just, bloom, their brains are just going to go flinging around and bing, 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 and they just, this seems to be how they think. And over, no matter how Shakyamuni dissects it, and they're all going, yeah, I get it. But still, talk about compassion and patience. I don't know that I'd have it. I know I don't have that much patience. I'm complaining about them 3,000 years after the fact. It's pretty wild. Okay. So Shakyamuni is still engaging Bodhisattva Kashyapa. Kashyapa is still, yes, but. So let's see. Let's see how this turns out, if it evolves at all. Here we go. Oh, wrong glasses. Thought my eyesight got really bad all of a sudden. My apologies. I hope you're keeping your wits about you in all this turmoil all over the world right now. And I'm not just talking about tariffs and the such. There's a lot going on. And there's a lot that's not being discussed, which is actually, I think, a lot more frightening. Because that just means, I knew these Brazilian military officers for a little while when I was working in the industry, and they explained to me a term that they use in, I think I've talked about this before, a term they used in Brazil called the piranha cow. Anyway, long story short, basically the ranchers, because they eat a lot of meat in South America, in Brazil particularly, but throughout South America. The ranchers, because all the rivers and tributaries are full of piranha, when they had to move their cattle, they had to cross lots of little waterways in order to not lose or injure, which would end up in loss, many of their cattle. They would take the weakest of the cattle and they would send them upstream. And if there were piranha present, which there often were, they would have a feeding frenzy on this one cow. And while that was going on, they would cross the rest of their cattle across the river, basically safely, because they were downstream. No signal of them reached this feeding frenzy where this froth of water was happening with this one cow being taken down by the piranha cow. And it's an interesting anecdote, but the reason it's interesting from a standpoint of how the term is used in Brazil, such a common story, they use it in many things like politics, where propaganda, a story is put out there, typical propaganda, look over here, while a bunch of nefarious stuff is going on and nobody's paying attention to it, meaning the media or any reporters or people aren't even observing it. They're so fascinated by, oh, this. And I think this is Trump's MO, his modus operandi. And I don't think he's the only one who does that. I think a lot of leaders do that. And unfortunately, it's quite effective. We don't get any of that with Shakyamuni, thank goodness. It's difficult enough to penetrate to the meaning of the stories he's telling. So we always have to remind ourselves that when he's telling these stories, he's talking to 3,000-year-old culture with endemic mythical ideas in their heads, and structurally as a society, they just can't let go of that. They can, but they don't desire to, because that's their safety net. That's their Linus's blanket from the Peanuts gang, right? So we see this back and forth going on because of this very problem. All right. Bodhisattva Kashyapa says to Shakyamuni Buddha, O world-honored one, what difference exists between supra-mundane, outside the mundane, dharma, and the mundane? What's the difference? You say that Shakyamuni Buddha is an existence eternal or outside of time. That's not what he's saying. He's saying Tathagata-ness, the Tathagata field, isn't constrained by time, whereas Buddha Shakyamuni's lifetime is constrained by time. Follow? Anyway, as I said, that terminology is very confused at this time and in these translations, and I fear that that's one reason why the teachings seem so impenetrable, is because of silly mistakes like that. So, and no changing is there. The eternal nature of self, too, is eternal or outside of time. Even a mote is also said to be eternal or outside of time. What? If the Tathagata is an eternal or outside of time existence, why does Shakyamuni Buddha not always show himself in this way? There's that sentence. And I think, maybe I should entertain changing that. Where it says, if the Tathagata is an eternal existence, existence is a trip there. It's a it should say realm. If the Tathagata is an eternal realm, why does Shakyamuni Buddha not always show himself in this way? Because Shakyamuni is not an eternal realm. That would make more sense, wouldn't it? I think I'm going to take a look at that. See if that doesn't help us understand. Let me know your thoughts, by the way. Always keen to hear from you guys. And Melly Mel. Can't go past a page without thanking Mel. There's always something to fix. I hope you're doing well, Mel. Thank you for your patronage. It's very much appreciated, as all of you are. If you can, help keep the lights on here, either through Patreon or through PayPal. It's a Bodhisattva act, and tremendously appreciated, not only by me, but everybody who gets to ingest this resource, yeah? If it is that you, Buddha, do not exist thus, what difference could we see? Why? Because Brahma, the mote existence, and Prakriti, primordial matter, also do not manifest thus. So this is that confusion in other words, and these other words are kind of confusing too. But basically what he's asking is, what's the difference between eternal and non-eternal? What is the difference? If, as an example, you, Buddha, seem to be not displaying, you're going to die. You're telling us you're MahaPariNirvana. You're about to go away. So obviously you're not eternal. And yet Tathagata is eternal. So how can... And again, it's that confusion of terminology, right? And they're desperate clinging to the idea that Tathagata is Shakyamuni Buddha. They don't understand the transition from a universal, eternal, always there since the beginning, potential for Buddhahood, which is what Tathagata is. That's why it's more a realm, right? It exists as a realm, as a potential, but it doesn't, quote unquote, exist as a physical, right, made thing. When it does take that form, we call it Buddha. And it's a form within the mind of the human existence, right? The human physical apparatus supporting this activity we call mind, which is fleeting. It's only here while the human being lives and breathes physically, right? But they're having a hard time with this. How can you, Shakyamuni, be a representation of Tathagata, which is eternal, calling yourself Buddha, but now you're going to die? Right? They can't quite follow. This is why I went through such great lengths in the beginning of the book to define Tathagata as a field or a realm of potential, not a thing in and of itself, but the potential, the parameters for the instantiation of, and that instantiation being called a different word to make it much more obvious, Buddha. But they're using that interchangeably here because they don't get the idea that something can be non-substantial and yet incredibly influence. A potential is something they can't abstract. Shakyamuni said to Kashyapa, "A rich man has many cows, whose colors vary. Nonetheless, they are all of one group, cows. They are entrusted to the hands of a cowherd, who takes them to watery or grassy land. Solely ghee is sought, not fresh milk or cream. The cattleman, having milked the cows, takes the milk himself. When the rich man dies, the cows are stolen by robbers. They get the cows, but having no women, they themselves milk the cows." Man. The robber says to one another, "The rich man fed these cows for ghee, not for fresh milk or cream. What should we do? Now ghee is the best of all tastes in the world. We have no utensils and no place to keep it safe in." They also say to one another, "We have a bag made of hide. We shall keep it in that. Although we have a thing to keep the milk in, we do not know how to churn it. It is hard to obtain what we would drink. How could we gain fresh butter?" At that, the robbers, because ghee was what they were after, added water to the milk. But because they added too much water, the fresh milk, cream, and ghee were all lost. The same with common mortals. Okay. There are good teachings, but all are the residues of the wonderful Dharma of the Tathagata, the potential. How Shakyamuni Buddha enters nirvana. Later, we steal what was left behind, i.e., the precepts, samadhi, and precepts, samadhi, and wisdom. What happened there? Samadhi and wisdom, sorry. This is like the robbers stealing the cows. All common mortals obtain the precepts, samadhi, and wisdom, but they have no means of working them out, perfecting them, implementing them. Hence, they never gain the eternal or outside of time precepts, the eternal or outside of time samadhi, or the eternal or outside of time wisdom and emancipation. This is like the robbers not having the means to work out, bring forth what they want, thus losing the ghee. Or it is like the robbers adding water when they meant to gain ghee. The same with common mortals. Referring to emancipation, beings say that self, being, life, man, Brahma, Ishvara, Prakriti, the precepts, samadhi, wisdom, emancipation, or thoughtless, non-thoughtlessness, the pure land, or nirvana, is nirvana. You just lump it all together without discerning the subtleties of the differences. This, however, i.e. just saying this, does not give one emancipation or nirvana. As I comment here, if you can name it, well, it's samsara. Nirvana is the absence, the liberation from naming, from identification, right? So consider that as you read this. He says, just saying this does not give one emancipation or nirvana. Just because you know all the rules and all the stories and all the texts and you're a great student and you can quote the teachings back and forth, that doesn't enlighten you. He's making quite a distinction for Kashyapa here, who's not getting it because he's intentionally not getting it. He's so occupied in clinging to the words of Shakyamuni that he's forgotten all about understanding the meaning behind the words. Common mortals do small-scale pure actions and make offerings to their parents. Then they gain rebirth in the Pure Land and attain small-scale bliss. So you get little advancements. Okay. This is like the milk to which the robbers added water. And common mortals do not themselves know the fact that one gets born in the Pure Land by small-scale pure actions and making offerings to one's parents. Also, they do not know the moral precepts, samadhi, wisdom, and taking refuge in the three treasures. Not knowing all this, they talk about eternity, bliss, self, and purity. Though they talk, they do not know what these are. They don't understand the meaning of these terms. Hence, after taking birth in this life, Shakyamuni Buddha talks about eternity, bliss, self, and purity. Chakravartin, a benevolent ruler, world's greatest just ruler, appears in the world. By the power of virtue, all the robbers pull back, and there is no loss of any cows. Then the Chakravartin entrusts the cows to be to the hands of a cowherd or cowherder who knows the way. This person works out the means well and obtains ghee. Due to the ghee, there is no illness or pain for any being. It is like this. When the Chakravartin of the wheel of Dharma appears in the world, all beings abandon these because they cannot talk about the precepts, samadhi, and wisdom. This is like the pulling back of the robbers. Then Shakyamuni Buddha indeed speaks of secular and supramundane things. For the benefit of all living beings, he lets the Bodhisattva talk as the occasion arises. The Bodhisattva Mahasattva, on gaining ghee, lets all the innumerable beings gain the unsurpassed mana of Dharma. The eternity, bliss, self, and purity of the Tathagata thus comes about, or appears or is realized. The Tathagata field is that which is eternal, or without time and unchanging. This is not in the manner in which common mortals and the ignorant of the world say that Brahma is eternal or outside of time. This eternal or outside of time is always with the Tathagata field and not with whatever else, because whatever else is a defined thing and therefore samsaric, right? O Kashyapa, all good men and good women should always carefully practice the way of the two-lettered Buddha, who is eternal or outside of time, i.e. in Chinese, Nyorai, consisting of two syllables or characters, means Buddha. One come from thusness, the thusness being the Tathagata field. Let me say that again. Remember the thus come one statement? And it's defined in Buddhism reference. One come from thusness. Right? If something, it's kind of flipped on its head. You can say a rock has certain characteristics. But what he's saying is that those characteristics pre-exist the rock. The rock simply expresses those characteristics. See, those characteristics are potential in the amalgam of energies, karma, that manifest. And when they manifest, they express that potential. The rock is an expression of potential. See, what came first? Did the rock appear and the universe went, oh, okay, we'll make more of those? Right? It makes no sense if you really think about it. The entire process from quiescent energy to formations, amalgamations, produce an object, a form. That's always the flow. The form then is the end result. And it is so much an end result, a product of all this energy, that it's temporary. Every moment it's still changing until it finally decays into energy. Right? It's not dust to dust. Dust is a thing. Something, some forces, some potential found expression to make that dust, which came together in certain characteristic ways, to express itself as rock, wood, tree, human, Bob. For a little while, until entropy breaks it down and it returns to, yes, dust, but only on its way to energy, which created the dust. The engine of life. Everything is like this. All right. O Kashyapa, any good man or good woman who practices the way of the two-lettered, such a one accords with what I do and gets born where I go. If any person practices the two letters and sees it as extinction, know that Shakyamuni Buddha enters parinirvana to, in the eyes of such a one, O good man, nirvana is the dharmata, the true essence of all Buddhas. Because all Buddhas are an expression of the potential which is Tathagata-ness. Manifested ones of the Tathagata field. There should not be. And every single page. Bodhisattva Kashyapa said to Shakyamuni Buddha, oh boy, what might the dharmata of the Tathagata field mean? Yeah. O world-honored one, I now desire to know about the dharmata. Oh, you heard a new word. Have compassion for and expound this to me extensively. Now, dharmata means abandoning one's body. To abandon means not to possess. If not possessed, how can the body exist? If the body exists, how can we say there is dharmata in the body? If the body possesses dharmata, how can the body exist? How can I know of this? Oh, man. Do you see how stuck Kashyapa is? And he's speaking for a whole horde of people. He's not a stupid man. He's just not getting the teachings correctly. Dharmata, for our modern understanding, I created the idea of the engine of life. This term I explain in the book Buddhism Reference has the following entry. So this is directly from the reference book that I wrote. 1. Myoho Renge Kyo. 2. Karma. And 3, the a priori mechanism of all instantiation of every phenomena. And that's just a rewording of what Buddha has said, Nichiren has said many times, the truth of all phenomena. The engine of life consists of 3 parts: energy in its rest state or quiescence as a state of all potential, where no thing exists in physical form. Secondly, the agitation or spark, perturbation, temperature change, vibration, or choose any word that pertains to some influence of a condition, some action of work, quote unquote, precipitated from the mounting static pressure. This new condition, no matter how minute, becomes the progenitor of a possible chain reaction. This chain reaction either compounds and adds more conditions and builds tendencies, or simply weakens and dissolves back into quiescence. This is the realm of formations. Expressions of energy manifesting moment to moment in a kinetics of instantiation. And thirdly, as these formations ultimately express into form, or karma, the expression of formations, are once again occurring in a kinetics of moment-to-moment instantiations, repeating and creating a momentum of expressions subject to the influences of the conditions and tendencies both within them and surrounding them, the environment. Remember Nichiren's self and environment? This is the basis of all phenomena from which all the universe is a function. Right? And if you're into science, I would refer you to Roger Penrose's CCC, Cyclical Conformal Cosmology. It's fascinating. It's exactly this. The engine of life is a way of distinguishing our experience of material reality from the profound energetic processes constantly creating, manifesting, and absorbing each and every particle, quote unquote, of that material reality, which are amalgams of energy, right? Suppose you hold an ordinary pencil between your thumb and forefinger. Hold it at one end only, preferably at the pointy end. Now, gently wave the pencil up and down so that the stubby end is creating an arc. Observe how the pencil seems to leave a trail of ghost-like instantiations of the pencil. It appears as though you are waving a multitude of pencils up and down. Samsara is like the perception that each one of those ghost images is actually real and can be grasped from the air in front of you. In reality, each one of those ghost images is empty, quote unquote, of reality and just a remnant of mental perception, past, future, present. Even the pencil itself is in this condition, though our samsaric sentient mind, with the lower consciousnesses constantly craving and grasping, is absolutely certain that the pencil is solid and not transient. But we also know that there is no persistent entity of pencil randomly popping up pencils in the air. This pencil will eventually disappear. This, again, is not meant to suggest that the pencil is not real, rather that our insistence on its persistence is a deep break from the reality of its impermanence. And this break becomes the source of our stress and anxiety of possessing, accruing, and all manner of worry about the pencil. Due to the engine of life, as a process of constant accumulation and disintegration, we too, being manifestations of this process ourselves, quite naturally follow its tendencies, accruing and craving more accrual and manifestations, etc. Just consider our obsessions with commodification and the latest and greatest, and so on. We are creatures of habit energy, collecting, identifying, and discriminating as we go. Our sentient mind has barely the time to catalog all this accrual and identification into our warehouse of experience. It is like careening down fast-moving rapids in a small kayak. We can barely spare a moment to avoid crashing into a rock. And this is the useful perception of the engine of life. Being in these rapids and spending every moment in utter turmoil is equitable to samsara. Now, or dukkha, right? Now take a moment to stand on the solid shore next to the rapids, listening to the roar of the water crashing over rocks and through chasms onto the waterfalls. Like the process of the engine of life, standing safely on the shore, we can appreciate with amazement the actions and tumult of the rapids, but without the slightest fear of crashing into those rocks. This is the detached state of Buddha-ness, not a denial of reality, but instead a much greater appreciation of it, for it. You see? They're not two different things. They're two different ways of engaging. The potential to witness, observe dharmata, or the engine of life, is tathagata-ness. That's the potential. That's the only reason we're here, to exercise, to experience this potential. Shakyamuni Buddha said to Kashyapa, "O good man, do not speak thus, that extinction is dharmata. Now, dharmata knows no extinction. O good man, this is as with the no thought, the pure land, the fourth dhyana, the pure land of the rapadhatu realm of form, where there is no thought of matter, though matter is perfectly equipped or provided. One might ask, how then can devas live there, please and amuse themselves, and have quietude? And how do they think, see, and ask? O good man, the world of Shakyamuni Buddha is not one which Sravakas and Pratyeka-Buddhas can know." So I made a note here. From the Lotus Sutra, we know why this is so. These Shravakas and Pratyekabuddhas practiced the counterfeit Dharma and remained attached to their physical realm. In the parable of the conjured city, Shakyamuni Buddha offered a mid-goal on the long road to Buddhahood for those monks who tired and considered turning back. This was a fake nirvana, a counterfeit nirvana, to inspire the monks to keep on their path, hoping they would come to appreciate the long road and ready themselves to continue upon it. To the ultimate goal was the aim of the counterfeit Dharma. However, we find in the Lotus parable that these monks were all too content to stay in their incomplete state, falsely believing they had attained Buddha. They didn't need Shakyamuni anymore. Yeah, go on. Remember, they left. Not all of them, but a big group of them. 5,000, 8,000, depends on the translation. Stood up and left. Nah, we don't need any more. We've got it. No, you don't. Also, next, do not so explicate and say that the body of the Tathagata field is extinction. It's, as long as there's a universe, there's a Tathagata field. Energy is energy, even quiescent energy. O good man, the Tathagata field and extinction are matters for the world of Buddhas. In other words, to even grapple with that esoteric question is a problem for human physical existence, not for Tathagata. Tathagata it's energy. It is not within Shravakas and Pratyekabuddhas' reach of knowing. Ouch. It's not their capacity. They're not there yet. They can't get it. O good man, do not entertain such thoughts as where the Tathagata field lives, where it works, where it is to be seen, where it enjoys itself. O good man, such too are things that do not come with the compass of your knowing. Everything regarding the Dharma body of all Buddhas and everything regarding the various expedients are beyond the range of worldly knowing. That's what he's saying. This is not something you can figure out in your samsaric mind. This is something other, right? The ninth consciousness. Also, next, O good man, practice the teachings of Shakyamuni Buddha, Dharma, and the life of the Sangha, and abide in the thought of the eternal. These three things do not contradict one another. There is no form of a non-eternal, or there is no change. Any person practicing these three as things which differ fails in the three refuges as are pure, which are pure. This we should know. This is to say that such a person lacks a place to abide in. No precept is fully learned. No fruit can come about from Shravakas or Pratyekabuddhas. Anyone who abides in the thought of the eternal, in this all-wonderfulness, has a place to take refuge in. O good man, it is like the shadow accompanying a tree. The same is the case with the Tathagata field. As there is the eternal, there is a refuge that can be taken. It is not non-eternal. If it is said that the Tathagata field is non-eternal, it cannot be a refuge for all the pure lands and people of the world. Bodhisattva Kashyapa says to Shakyamuni Buddha, O world-honored one, it is, for example, like the case of a tree in the darkness, where there is no shadow. O Kashyapa, do not say that there is a tree and that there is no shadow. It is merely that the fleshy eye, the unenlightened, cannot see it. The same with the Tathagata field. Its nature is eternal. It does not change. One cannot see it without the eye of wisdom. This is as in the case where no tree shadow appears in the darkness. Common mortals, after the death of Shakyamuni, may well say the Tathagata field is non-eternal. This is the same. If one says that the Tathagata field is other than Dharma and Sangha, there cannot be three refuges. This is as in the case in which, as your parents are different from each other, there is the non-eternal. Bodhisattva Kashyapa says, again to Shakyamuni, "But, O world-honored one, henceforth I for the first time shall, with the eternalism of Shakyamuni Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha, enlightened parents for ages, down to 7 generations. It is wonderful indeed. O world-honored one, I shall now learn the all-wonderfulness of the Tathagata field, Dharma, and Sangha. Having satisfied myself, I shall expound this widely to all others. If they do not have resolve in the teachings, I will know that they long practice the non-eternal. To such as these, I shall be like frost and hail." Okay. But does that mean he understands it? People often mistake knowing the verbiage of something to be understanding of something. But that's not so, is it? Then Shakyamuni Buddha praised Bodhisattva Kashyapa and said, well said, well said. You now indeed protect and uphold wonderful Dharma. Such protections of Dharma is no cheating of people. By the good act of not cheating, deceiving others, one obtains a long life and becomes well able to read one's past life. What got you here, right? This chapter ends up being a bit remedial. This is my words here. As this appealed to monks not yet grasping their own potential tathagata-ness to instantiate Buddha mind, or I, to replace the fleshy I of samsara. A visualization or analogy comes to mind for me of the Tathagata field. The sciences, when it comes to the thoughts on the very base fundamentals of all matter and energies in the cosmos, beyond the particle, beyond the formations of energy, the discussion turns to information. One of the great debates of our time is the information paradox of black holes. Where does the information go? Or at least, what happens to the information? Hawking proposed leakage from black holes as radiation, energy leaking back into the cosmos. If we can visualize Tathagata as a condition of information to be read, that is, to be used, useful, to be absorbed or combined, sticky, or some priori condition for implementation, in other words, simply not at rest, then we can extrapolate that any energy coming into contact with that information condition would have myriad opportunity to react, combine, shield, repel, or modify in accord with its own conditions and tendencies. Within the base configuration of this Tathagata is the kernel of observation, but not filtered observation. This observation would be, by its nature, absolutely clear, unconditioned, and, quote, pure, yes? Yes, other energies might combine and add their own impurity, but then those would amount to clouded manifestations of other matters. When the Tathagata is combined directly with sophisticated and more complex amalgams of energy, the amalgam becomes greatly affected by the purity of this potential information of the Tathagata. Because the Tathagata is so priori to more complex formations, it is then available to all formations, making it immense and growing exponentially, just as the cosmos. It too becomes a field of potential, just as electron fields and so on. When the sentient mind is trained to come into contact with this Tathagata field of energy, the result is a falling away of the clouds of samsara filters. of karmic repercussions and conditioning to reveal a state of information that is unedited and pure, truth, raw, continuous, and a revelation in experience of the mind of observation. This is Buddhahood, and it can only occur in the sentient mind of living beings. And that's how I close that chapter. So, it may seem like that chapter wanders a bit. I'll grant you that. But it is a re-exploration of a consistent theme that the student monks are struggling with, and that is simply the understanding that energy is what forms, quote, reality in our samsaric experience. But to understand our samsaric experience objectively and see it for what it truly is requires a mind that transcends that samsaric attachment, which is super, super strong, right? Because it's what formed us, right? The idea of things is what we ourselves are, a thing, or many, 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 many things, right? Like they estimate around 42 million genes in a DNA strands. The numbers are boggling. But it's not until we get our head out of the enumeration of thingness, the identification of stuff, including ourselves and you and I, not getting rid of it, not annihilating it, once again, like getting out of the rapids, and seeing objectively how this is flowing along, coming together and dissipating, every moment to moment to moment, whole new fascination and clarity abounds. It's so much that it really begets a calming, because there's just no time to react. Every reaction is almost laughable, because by the time you react, it's already gone. It's just following along the momentum with the understanding of what builds that momentum and where that momentum has potential to go. Because it's not a crystal ball, it's happening. Namo Myo Renge Kyo. I don't know that I'm faring any better than Shakyamuni did, but I'm trying. And as always, I encourage you to share your thoughts in the comments. Or if you're not sure about your own thoughts, certainly you can email me directly. Yeah. Anyway, that's it for today. Ebooks available on lulu.com /spotlight/Kwoon. There are links. The website's back up. Some weirdness went on there. I still don't understand, but there it is. Yay. So lots of resources there, all free. The podcasts, all free. Yeah, share these videos with your friends. I've even suggested at one point that some of you really want to get involved and you like a sense of community. So invite some friends, 1 friend, 10 friends, whatever, to come watch one of these videos together, and then have a discussion period about it. Make it a potluck, whatever. This is in many ways a solitary practice, right? Only you can awaken your Buddha ninth consciousness. No one can hand it to you. Nobody can do it for you. And you can't hand yours to anyone else. They're your specific amalgam of thoughts and understandings, right? But you can be like-minded, right? It takes many people who like doing a certain activity to get together and form a club, whether it's a motorcycle club or a football club or a baseball club or chess club or sewing circle, whatever. You don't like doing the same aspect. You don't like sewing the same thing. It's sewing that gets you charged up, and you can share a lot of knowledge with one another on that. And you can watch or read a book to get like a book club, right? And get together and go, oh, I didn't think about that in this book. Oh, I didn't see that analogy, right? And you can share different ways of seeing the same thing, which is very much a part of Buddhist study. It's not just Buddhism that we study, it's life that we study. So if you can make Buddhism a central point of your gathering to study and have discussions, why not enjoy it? Why not make it a potluck, right? Anyway, the reason I created this resource and I keep growing this resource is to make you confident, make you feel like there are no black holes for you, and that you can find answers to questions in different ways, and that the practice is really not as hard as some might make it be, and it's certainly not dull or dogmatic, right? Okay, enough blah, blah, blah. Thank you for your practice. Thank you for being here. Please take care of your health. And I will see you in the next one. Bye for now.